The most significant shift in Middle Eastern geopolitics in half a century is happening in total silence. We are witnessing the birth of a security architecture that contradicts every established norm of the region. Israel and the United Arab Emirates are no longer just diplomatic partners. They are rapidly becoming a unified military bloc. This isn't merely a strategic realignment. It is a total departure from the Arab-Israeli conflicts that define the 20th century. As the conflict with Iran continues to reshape the map, Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv have moved past public declarations and into deep, operational integration. But if this alliance succeeds in creating a new regional bulwark, what does it mean for the traditional consensus that governed the Gulf for generations? This matters because the balance of power in the Middle East has effectively shattered. For decades, the Gulf was held together by a fragile consensus, anchored by organizations like OPEC, and a general alignment on regional security that prioritized neutrality and state sovereignty above all else. The UAE's recent departure from OPEC, a move that stunned global energy markets, is the clearest indicator that the old guard is dissolving. By pivoting toward a security partnership with Israel, the UAE has signaled that it is no longer interested in waiting for a regional consensus that may never come. In this new era, the winners are those who prioritize shared technological and military interests over historical or ideological baggage. The losers, however, are the traditional regional actors who find themselves increasingly isolated in a landscape that no longer speaks their language. Trapped between the rising influence of Iran and the new high-tech defensive wall being constructed by the UAE-Israel axis. To understand this shift, we have to zoom out to the concept of threat-driven security. In global politics, alliances are usually forged when nations realize they cannot manage an existential risk alone. For Israel, the threat is a persistent, multi-front proxy network and a nuclear-ambitious Iran. For the UAE, the threat is a regional hegemon that controls vital energy choke points and targets the infrastructure that keeps a modern nation alive. When these two disparate countries map their security interests, they find a perfect overlap. It is about shared survival in an era of decentralized, high-volume drone and missile warfare. The mechanism of this alliance is built on defensive integration. In the past, Gulf defense was defined by the purchase of expensive foreign-made systems, buying a battery of missiles and hoping they worked when needed. The new reality is fundamentally different. Israel is not just selling hardware. It is sharing its domestic innovation, specifically the architecture of the Iron Dome and advanced multi-layer missile interception. Most importantly, this is a live collaboration. Israeli personnel have been deployed to Emirati soil to operate these systems, creating a real-time exchange of intelligence that allows both nations to track adversarial movements across the entire region. They are effectively building a shared digital eyes and ears network that connects the Mediterranean to the Gulf. This creates a defensive perimeter that is greater than the sum of its parts. The consequences of this are immediate and global. For governments, it creates a new pole of influence, pulling the UAE closer to the Western security framework, while simultaneously distancing it from the influence of regional cartels. For corporations, it changes the fundamental calculation of risk in the region. If the UAE and Israel can guarantee the safety of key transport routes and energy hubs, the Gulf becomes a more resilient, if polarized, center for global commerce. However, there is a profound secondary effect: the marginalization of those who refuse to align. By breaking from the traditional OPEC consensus, the UAE has essentially traded its role as a neutral diplomatic broker for the security provided by a high-tech military alliance. It is a calculated wager that in the 2026 climate, security is more valuable than commodity control. A common misunderstanding is that this is merely an extension of the 2020 normalization efforts. Many assume that because the diplomatic groundwork was laid years ago, this is just a standard trade agreement. That view misses the gravity of the military integration. This is not about diplomatic photo ops. It is about the integration of military command structures. Most people fail to realize that the UAE's withdrawal from OPEC was a prerequisite for this shift. By leaving the cartel, the UAE signaled that its economic future is now tied to a Western-aligned security framework rather than a regional, oil-dependent one. The economic and the military have become one and the same. This is no longer a trade bloc. It is a security necessity masquerading as a shift in energy policy. What happens next rests on the sustainability of this alliance under pressure. In the first scenario, the UAE-Israel bloc successfully creates a deterrent that forces regional adversaries to reconsider their tactics. This requires the continued integration of missile defense and intelligence, essentially turning the Gulf into an impenetrable defensive zone. If successful, this creates a new stability based on technological dominance rather than diplomatic negotiation, effectively rendering mass swarm drone attacks ineffective and forcing adversaries to expend resources they do not have. In the second scenario, the alliance triggers deeper regional polarization. As the UAE aligns closer with Israel and the West, other regional powers may feel forced to move even closer to Iran or other alternative partners, essentially splitting the Middle East into two hostile, entrenched camps. This would make the region significantly more volatile, with the UAE-Israel axis becoming a primary target for proxies, testing the limits of their shared defensive capabilities and the durability of their new, unwritten mutual defense pact. This would be a high-stakes chess match where a single miscalculation could ignite a broader conflict. Furthermore, we have to consider the long-term impact on the global energy market. The UAE's departure from OPEC was the first domino. If other Gulf states, fearing Iranian aggression, seek similar security guarantees and break from the cartel to protect their own logistical freedom, the global price of oil could become entirely unmoored from the traditional supply-side controls we have known for half a century. We are effectively watching the end of the oil era as a unifying geopolitical force in the Middle East. We are left with a reflection on the changing nature of the nation-state in the 21st century. The UAE and Israel have demonstrated that, in the face of existential threats, pragmatic necessity can overcome decades of ideological enmity. They have traded the comfort of traditional identity-based alliances for the harsh, efficient reality of military integration. This shift represents a transition from value-based foreign policy to capability-based foreign policy. It is a world where friends are not chosen by history, but by the ability to defend a terminal or intercept a missile. As we watch this new bloc consolidate its position, the question arises: if the traditional regional consensus is dead, and the new stability is built on a foundation of integrated missile defense and shared intelligence, what happens to the countries that are left outside this security circle? Are we heading toward a more stable Middle East, or are we simply building a more advanced, high-tech version of the same old divide? In a world where the speed of a missile is the only real metric of power, perhaps the silence in which this alliance was formed is its most powerful feature. The old map is gone. The new one is currently being drawn in the command centers of Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv. The question is whether this new architecture can withstand the fires it is intended to extinguish, or if it will only serve to make the coming storms more frequent and more destructive.